And welcome back, everyone. We are going to dive a little bit deeper into examining how we can make better pixel art by utilizing a little something we have discussed before, which is the concept of layers. Now, here I've created a 32 by 32 canvas, and we have, of course, just a white background. So to kind of get us started, I'm just going to go over my pencil tool real quick. And of course, if I try to use that pencil tool on here, we can, of course, create a couple small dots on here. Or I could even, of course, fill it in with black and maybe even switch the pencil tool to being white just to create a couple spots. And of course, this is all done on just that single background. I'm just going to back this up just a little bit just so we can have our white canvas again. All right, now, if you recall, when I make a new layer down here in the layers panel, there is this little box right here that has like the plus symbol. If I click that, it'll make a new layer. Now, of course, this says layer 1. And you can see that it is a transparent layer. It is not filled currently with any colors. We can tell that because we have this gray and white pattern inside the thumbnail right here. Now, if I'm going to, let's say, go ahead and let's just make a different color. Let's choose like red. All right, just so we have something different. And I'm just going to go ahead and add a couple red squares here. And maybe I'm just going to color over a couple of the black squares as well. Now, what's going to be interesting to see is as we play around with this, is we also have the ability to affect things like opacity, if you recall. So I'm just going to slide that slider down on the opacity here. And you can see that those red squares now are much, much fainter than when we had it at 100%. And that's because when they're 100%, it is pretty much allowing those squares to be 100% there. Whereas if I scale that opacity down, they're much more transparent. Now, similarly, if I were to, for example, hide layer 1, we can, of course, see that our black squares are still here. If we look right here, these squares right here, and I click on layer 1 again, you can see that those red squares are also still there. It's just that we're hiding them beneath those squares. Now, let's just go ahead and add just another layer real quick. And I'm just going to make another set of squares. Let's just go ahead and make these blue. And I'm going to go put a couple blue squares in here just for some kicks. All right, that should be good. Now, what I want to point out here is, of course, we still have the ability to affect things like opacity. We can still hide layers. We can also arrange layers, which of course we've seen. We can drag and drop them in order to move them into different spots. So you can see now that the red layer is taking precedence over the blue layer. If I drag that blue back to the top, you can see now the blue layer has precedence. Pretty simple and straightforward stuff. Just a nice good review of things before we kind of actually start applying that to some pixel art. So let's keep this here just kind of as a reference. And we're going to go ahead and create a new 32 by 32 image. So let's just go ahead and do 32 by 32. Always check your sizes here before you get started. So we have 32 by 32 pixels per inch. And we, of course, can leave our background as white. That is fine. Of course, we do have other options. We have transparent, black, etc. But for our purposes today, starting with a white background will be fine. And here's our nice 32 by 32 image. I can do Control 0 again to zoom that in. And what we're going to do is that we're going to attempt to make a very basic house. Now, of course, if you think about a house, you think about it has walls, roof, door, maybe some windows, maybe even a chimney. And obviously that allows us to think about how is a house going to be shaped. Now, what we might say is, okay, this is my first layer here. And I'm going to say, okay, we know, let's say every house is going to, for example, they're still in blue. Let's change that back to black and white. There we go. And let's go ahead and just make the base of our house here. And I'm just going to go ahead and hold that shift key to kind of make this nice and even. Okay, there's our house. And then we're going to just bring that across. There's the bottom of my house right here. And then, of course, maybe I want to make like a roof structure. So I might, of course, add a point here. And of course I could, fix this up as I need to kind of make that roof look a little bit nicer. So you can see I might have to trim this up a little bit, but we have here a pretty basic roof and house. So We can play around with this, of course, make it how we want it to be in order to kind of make it look maybe just a little bit nicer. We have, of course, lots and lots of options to be able to do that. But for now, maybe this is just what we want to start with. Nothing too crazy. All right. Now, where this is going to come in with our properties of layers is that we can, of course, come in here and say, well, maybe we don't want this house to be quite so elaborate, or maybe we want to simplify things just a little bit. Now, we have options here when we start working with pixel art of how we can make everything come together. And layers are a great way for us to be able to do that. So I've cleaned up my house a little bit here, and now I can say, you know what, there's my house. Of course, I can come back later and I can say, you know, I want this maybe to look even better. Maybe I want to have, for example, a more pointed roof, things like that. But of course, that's all things we can do later on. So what we're going to do is, for now, just to kind of get us started with this, is I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer down here. So click on my new layer button. And I'm actually going to add a couple different layers here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and try to make a couple different variations of houses here based upon this design. Now, of course, I can come back and say, you know, maybe I want a different roof, stuff like that. Maybe I want to have a different shape of the house. But let's just stick with this basic house shape right here and say, you know what, maybe we want to have different layouts for the upstairs, the front door, stuff like that. So I'm going to pause the video, come back, and then when we come back, you're going to see a couple different layers options that we can do, and all of them are going to be on each of these layers here. And we are back, and you can see I have done some modifications to my house. So I have gone ahead and left, of course, the base of the house here. This is just the background. We left on that white layer. But I've also made a couple small variations of how this house could look. Now, of course, I added different things on different layers, and that's one thing that I kind of really want to hone in here. When we start making our pixel art, rather than making everything on one layer here, we utilize multiple layers so that everything's much more modular. So we can pick and pull apart different pieces. So for example, you can see here I have a chimney, but I can easily hide that chimney if I didn't want it to be there. Of course, then we have like an upstairs window. So if we wanted to hide that from the house, we have the option to do that as well. One of the cool things though is I have these two different door options. So right here I have a door more in the center. But if I hide that, I can do more of a door and window style house. So these are, of course, different options that I have. Now, of course, you will notice that there is an importance in precedence here. For example, we will see that the layers that are built here never have anything that are going to overlap with one another. If they did, I would have to choose which layer takes precedence over another. For example, the background layer, which is of course the house structure itself, is always here on the very bottom layer because I want that to be present no matter what. All right, go ahead and at this point make your own house using the same techniques that we've shown. It can be either this house here, or maybe you want to change it up and change it up. Up to you, but the important thing is that when you make your house, you are utilizing these layer techniques that we have shown here in this video.